Well, thank you, and good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that Calgary is on Treaty 7 territory, home to the Blackfoot Confederacy of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, as well as the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda nations of Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. I also acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who have a deep connection with this land. Also, thank you to Minister Turton and our community partners for joining us for today's announcement. Gender-based violence can take many forms, including family violence, intimate partner violence, sexual assault, coercion, and financial control, and it can happen to anyone. Gender-based violence in all its forms is unacceptable and cannot be tolerated. And while this is a critical issue for many people, gender-based violence is a hard thing to talk about. It's something we would rather assume happens in other places, not here in our communities, not to our friends, our neighbors, or our families. The truth is that gender-based violence happens every day and everywhere, and it needs to stop. That's why we are investing $15.7 million in new funding to support expanding existing and important work already underway across the province, identify new gender-based violence prevention opportunities, and continue supporting survivors. Today, I am announcing several initiatives that will support our government's response to gender-based violence, including supporting women's shelter programming to focus on access to safety and inclusive services, improving the reporting and prevention efforts at post-secondary institutions and First Nations colleges to address campus sexual violence, increasing service provider access to education and resources related to elder abuse, supporting academic research on gender-related injury and illness in the workplace, strengthening supports for Albertans navigating the justice system, including developing more survivor-centered, culturally sensitive, trauma-informed services, and implementing Indigenous-led initiatives that advance the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Roadmap. These targeted investments are part of an overall effort to continue to ensure every person in this province lives without the fear of gender-based violence. Our government is also finalizing a comprehensive 10-year strategy to end gender-based violence. Our strategy will provide a roadmap to help us fill in gaps in services and also coordinate efforts. But equally important is that we do not wait until we have a comprehensive plan complete, that we act where and when it's needed, which is why we're here today. As Minister of Arts, Culture and Status of Women, I look forward to finalizing the strategy and continuing to make meaningful strides towards ending gender-based violence. Ending the violence requires a collective effort from all of us. Working together, we can create a future free from violence for everyone. I will now turn it over to Minister Turton to provide more details on the funding coming from his Ministry of Children and Family Services. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Premier Smith and the Government of Alberta, I'm pleased to be here with my good friend and colleague, Minister Tanya Fir, Minister of Arts, Culture and Status of Women. I'd also like to thank Catherine Champagne, Executive Director of the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, and Linette Soldan from Rowan House for being here today. Women's shelters provide so much more than a bed to women and children fleeing domestic violence. For so many, it is a safe place, a connection to help meet basic needs, and a necessary support system to know that anyone experiencing the trauma of family violence is not alone. Women's shelters also provide critical services, such as counseling, safety planning, parenting supports and childcare, culturally responsive supports, and referrals to other community services. And we are proud to support the great work of women's shelters across our province, keeping Albertans safe and help them find the resources that they need. And that is why I'm so pleased to announce more than $7 million in funding, including $3 million this year, to support and strengthen women's shelter resources right by Alberta's government negotiating a bilateral agreement with the federal government. And this funding will help women's shelters continue to meet needs in their communities, offer innovative and supportive programming, and help vulnerable women heal from their trauma. Funding will also go towards projects and initiatives that prevent family violence, including targeted grants that can be used for community capacity building, prevention, and Indigenous-led initiatives. Because everyone deserves a life free from violence and abuse. With today's announcement, we continue to progress on our government's commitment to promise to invest $10 million in additional funds into the sector over 4 years. And we are grateful for Minister Fir's effort on the development of a provincial strategy that ensures that this vital and life-saving service continues to be supported and available for vulnerable Albertans. Through this critical investment, all women's shelters currently funded for domestic violence by the government will receive a one-time payment of 3.5% of current operational funding. Now, this builds on our one-time $5 million investment last year to help shelters address immediate needs. And this is part of nearly $57 million that we have invested this year to support women's emergency shelters across the province, including Second Stage, Fee-for-Service and First Nations communities, and the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, which provides leadership to so many sector members. As a government, we are proud to support these organizations for the critical work they do to help women and their children fleeing abuse. To any Albertan experiencing abuse or at risk, you are not alone. For access to 24/7 free and confidential support with a call or text to the Family Violence Info line at 310-1818 or the web chat at alberta.ca/safetychat. All of these supports help make sure that people who are seeking safety or needing information on supports can get the help that they need. So thank you again to all of our sector partners for their tireless efforts to keep Albertans fleeing family violence. Now, I will now turn it over to Catherine Champagne, Executive Director for the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Turton, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm proud to be here on behalf of the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. Today's announcement serves as a reminder of the important work that our members do daily to support vulnerable Albertans and put an end to family and gender-based violence. This investment also demonstrates the Government of Alberta's ongoing commitment to strengthening women's shelters and to helping to ensure that our members can have the resources they need to serve their communities. As Minister Turton mentioned, women's shelters provide so much more than just a bed to those fleeing family violence. Each person seeking support has their own story. Shelter staff across the province work with impacted individuals and families to understand their needs, provide empathy, care, and hope in the midst of trauma. Whether it's helping parents in distress access childcare, supporting survivors through outreach programs, connecting survivors and their children to healthcare resources or counseling services to support their well-being, or making sure families staying in shelter are housed, are clothed, and have enough to eat, Alberta Women's Shelters continue to go above and beyond to care for those in need. Continuing to invest in women's shelters resources across the province will make it easier for anyone fleeing violence to find support when and where they need it. The Alberta Council of Women's Shelters has a dual mission to both serve our members and to work together to end domestic violence and abuse. This work involves advocating for our members and supporting them through violence prevention programs, staying up to date on relevant research, and providing training and education for frontline staff. We work to help equip our members with resources they need to support survivors and change the culture around violence by promoting both awareness and prevention strategies. Since our approach to violence prevention is so informed by the experiences of our members, it's vital to have a strong shelter resources available so that we can continue to meet the evolving needs of our survivors. As we continue to work to protect families, empower women, and change the culture to help prevent violence, we need strong partners who share these same goals. This funding provided by the Government of Alberta is further proof that we are committed to addressing family and gender-based violence together in our province. Today's announcement is part of an ongoing conversation on how we can improve the way we support anyone experiencing violence. One of the best ways to do that is continuing to support those who go above and beyond to protect and support vulnerable Albertans every single day. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Linette Soldan, the Executive Director of Rowan House Women's Shelter.
Thank you very much, Kat. First off, I want to say we are very grateful at Rowan House Society for the funds that we received. Rowan House Society serves a large geographic area from the city limits of Calgary all the way to Claire's home, from Vulcan to Eden Valley. Without the funds that we received, we are not able to build as much capacity, but because of the funds, we're able to now. We want to make sure that everybody who is experiencing domestic violence and abuse is able to get help and support in a timely manner. And through the community engagement program that we have implemented, we're able to do that now. So for an example, one of the major things that we're able to do now is that they're able to get into the community, raise awareness about domestic violence and abuse, and be able to help anybody who's experiencing. And so no one is feeling left alone. So again, thank you very much.
All right, we'll now go over to Q&A. Media mic's just over here. Remember, one question, one follow-up. Please state your name, your outlet, and who your question is for. Thank you very much. So we'll go to the first of the media mic. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's Alana Smith with the Globe and Mail. This is a question for both ministers. I wanted to ask you both about the allegations published by the Globe last week that indicate the Premier's Chief of Staff was interfering in AHS contracts on behalf of a private company. The Health Minister and others were aware. What do you think this says about the Premier's leadership, that she either didn't tell you or didn't tell Cabinet or wasn't aware?
Well, I mean, our government takes these allegations very seriously. That's why the Premier has written to the Auditor General requesting an expedited review of this issue, and we welcome the investigation of the AG, and we're also waiting the results of AHS's internal review, and I won't say anything further until we receive the results of these investigations.
It's alleged that there were already multiple reviews going on at AHS regarding the procurement practices and the government stopped those. Do you think that that was fair in any way? Do you think it was fair that ministers were kept in the dark about these investigations?
Again, as I said, we welcome the investigation by the Auditor General, and I won't be commenting further on it until we have the results of those investigations.
Just one more question. I wanted to ask you about
I'm sorry. That was two questions. We'll go to the next reporter, please.
Is leading the health department, which is reviewing itself. Do you think it's fair that Minister Lagrange can stay in her role while there's this investigation ongoing of her own department?
We'll go to the next reporter, please. Thank you very much.
It's a question for Minister Turton. What do you make of the fact that these allegations include millions of dollars spent on children's medications that were found to be unusable or even unsafe as well?
Well, I appreciate the Premier's decisive leadership with asking for the expedited review from the Auditor General, and look forward to seeing how that review works out. And I know many people are anxious for the Auditor General to begin his work.
How can we make sure that there is a transparent, independent investigation? And are you or any of your members of Cabinet calling for any sort of resignation or for the Health Minister or Premier to step down?
Well, the Auditor General is an independent officer of the legislature, and so I appreciate his independence. And like Mr. Fir said, I'm very thankful that the Premier has put forth and asked and requested from the Auditor General to have that expedited review take place. And I'm quite sure that many people are looking forward to for the Auditor General to begin his work in this regard.
All right, seeing no more questions on the floor, we'll go to the lines.
Question comes from the line of Shalan Skolsky from CTV News. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question, and to both ministers as well. What do you make of the calls for both the Health Minister and the Premier to step aside while these reviews take place?
I'll reiterate what I said. I'm very much looking forward to, and I know most Albertans are looking forward to the investigation by the Auditor General. And I think it's important that we await those results, and I don't have comments on it until we get those results from the investigation.
Follow up, Shailan.
Yeah, just putting that same question to Minister Turton, and then just as a follow-up, I know it isn't either of your files directly, but as a member of this government, and I think one of you even introduced your remarks saying, as a minister representing this government, how do you answer questions from the public who have concerns about the allegations they're reading about?
Well, I think that's a key reason why the Premier has shown very decisive leadership with asking for that expedited review from the Auditor General. Obviously, we want to make sure that we get information out to Albertans as quickly as possible, and I'm very thankful that that process has begun, and I know many Albertans are looking forward to seeing that review completed.
All right, we'll go to the next one on the phones.
Your next question comes from the line of Charles Dalal from Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Hello, my question is for Minister Tanya Fir. You mentioned a strategy beginning with this announcement of investment. Has that started? Kind of where are we at? Can we get more info on what the strategy might look like?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. You know, as the Status of Women Minister, I'm really honored to have this file, and the gender-based violence strategy that we're working with. I mean, we engaged with over 500 stakeholders, women's shelters, community members, survivors, members of rural and remote communities, and 11 different communities across the province, Indigenous-led community stakeholder engagements as well. And the amount of feedback that we received was so important. We're working right now on finalizing the gender-based violence strategy and hoping to release it here in the next couple of months. It's going to be a Made in Alberta strategy that really focuses on breaking the cycle, prevention, as we talked about, identifying root causes. I mean, and this is in addition to the $150 million that our government already spends in this area. But this strategy is going to be so important, as I said, in identifying gaps, focusing on prevention efforts. There'll be several pillars to it. Two of them that are very important to me are women's economic empowerment. We know that when women have the financial security and stability to look after themselves and their children, they can flee permanently some of those very difficult situations. As well as engaging men and boys. We've got to engage men and boys in early prevention, early training, early education. And we have so many of our community providers doing such exceptional work in that area. I know Minister Turton and I have both toured so many women's shelters, and I get emotional when I talk about it, because you see the youngest survivors are in this situation are the children, right, who are really innocent, and those places where they should feel safest with their mom and dad, they often don't. So engaging men and boys, breaking the cycle, it's critical, and our government is proud to do this work.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, my follow-up is for Minister Turton. Just so it's announced that I'm just looking at my notes real quick, about $7 million in funding, $3 million this year. Can you kind of just walk me through this funding? Is it included in what Minister Fir was talking about just earlier as well?
Yes, no, thank you so much for that question. So this is, the funding really comes from the fantastic work that Mr. Fir has been doing as our point person when it comes to spearheading the National Action Plan on behalf of the government of Alberta. And this funding will truly mean so much for so many families across here, across the province. Just to echo some of the comments that Minister Fir said, with this announcement, it will actually mean that there's a child, maybe in a week or two, or in the future, that is going through some of the hardest times of their entire life, that will actually have a safe place to be able to go. It will mean that a young mother that really feels as if the world is crashing down on her will actually have a safe place and a bed and a place to find and begin that healing process for the very first time. And that's what this funding actually means. It means that we're actually making a tangible difference for women, for children, to start that process of ending the generational-based trauma. And we know that this funding is going to make a huge difference. I'm very thankful to have Kat here as well with women's shelters, because she does incredible work just advocating for this sector, because we know for so many of our women's shelters across the province, they are an absolute refuge. They are a safe harbor for so many individuals just needing help and need a place for that healing process to begin. So that's why I also get emotional with announcements like this, because it's not very often that you can help participate in an announcement that we know is going to make a huge difference in the eyes and the lives of a small child or a young mom that has nowhere else to go. So very thankful that we were able to help support women's shelters who just do incredible work here in the province, and we do know it's making a difference.
All right, we have time for one more set of questions. Operator, next call, please.
Your next question comes from the line of Jack Farrell from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hey, this is a question for both ministers. How can Adriana LaGrange lead both the health department, which is reviewing itself here, and when she was it's being alleged that she was the one ordering AHS to sign contracts that our former AHS CEO rejected because they were too costly and she had concerns about the ownership groups of these chartered surgical facilities. I'm curious what you two kind of think about that practice in itself. Is that good governance?
Yes, and we take these allegations extremely seriously, and that's why the Premier was very quick to be able to request an expedited review from the Auditor General, because we know that Albertans want answers. And so I'm thankful for her leadership to begin that process, and I know that Mr. LaGrange will have more to speak on this very shortly.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. I guess it's a bit of I'm going to say it's a bit of a non-answer for me. Like, do you think that's enough for Albertans? Like, we have a ton of allegations out in the public, and nobody's answering questions. Like, you two are the first ministers to really go up and take a press conference since this has come out. We had the Premier, tweet on Saturday, the first time acknowledging this. Like, we're coming up on a week with all of these allegations out, and I guess I'm really curious if you guys think Albertans deserve more answers from this government on this.
Well, there will be much more coming from the government, but in the short term, like I said, and so also as Minister Fir, the Premier has put forth that review and a request to the Auditor General. There are a number of other reviews happening within AHS as well, and I know that Mr. LaGrange will have much more to say in this in the very near future.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. That concludes our press conference today.